You never really know how cruel people can be until they try to take away the one thing that makes your child feel safe. It all started with a letter on our door, one of those official-looking HOA notices with bold red letters that said, "Violation, unauthorized animal." My heart sank before I even finished reading the first line. See, that unauthorized animal wasn't just a pet. It was Buddy, my son's service dog. The dog that helped my boy get through nights of panic, fear, and tears. The dog that gave him back his smile after years of therapy and silence. That notice felt like someone trying to take away the only hope my son had found. I stood in the doorway, staring at the letter, my hands shaking. My first thought wasn't anger, it was fear. How was I going to explain this to my son? How could I tell him that the same people who wave and smile at us every morning were now trying to take his best friend away? Buddy came into our lives 3 years ago, when my son, Ethan, was at his lowest. After a car accident left him with severe anxiety and PTSD, he barely spoke. He used to wake up screaming at night, trembling, gasping for air. No medicine seemed to help, and every therapist said the same thing: he needs emotional stability. Then came Buddy. We rescued him from a shelter, a golden retriever with gentle eyes and a calm spirit. From the moment Ethan met him, something clicked. It was like the walls around my boy's heart started to fall apart. For the first time in months, he smiled. He hugged Buddy, whispered something in his ear, and didn't let go for hours. From that day on, they were inseparable. Buddy followed Ethan everywhere, to school, to therapy, even to the grocery store. When Ethan panicked, Buddy nudged him, grounded him, and kept him calm. That dog wasn't just trained, he was a miracle in fur. So when that HOA notice arrived, it didn't just threaten us. It broke something inside me. The letter said we were in violation of HOA rules because pets over 40 pounds weren't allowed without approval. It didn't matter to them that Buddy was a service animal, legally protected by federal law. To them, it was simple: rules are rules. I called the HOA office immediately. The woman who answered had a tone colder than the notice itself. "Ma'am," she said, "if the dog isn't registered with the association, he has to go." "He's not just a dog," I replied. "He's my son's service animal." She paused for a second, then said, "You'll need to provide documentation, or the board will proceed with enforcement." That word, enforcement, hit me like a punch. I sent them everything: letters from the doctor, service dog certification, even a note from Ethan's therapist explaining how vital Buddy was for his emotional health. But guess what? The HOA refused. They said emotional support or service animals still had to comply with weight and breed restrictions. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about control. The next week, they sent another letter. Final notice: remove the animal within 14 days, or fines will begin at $200 per day. My husband wanted to keep calm. "Let's not make this a fight," he said. "But how do you stay calm when someone threatens your child's peace? When they try to take the one being who makes him feel safe?" Ethan overheard us one night. He came out, holding Buddy's leash, his eyes full of tears. "Mom," he whispered, "are they going to take Buddy away?" That broke me. Completely. I knelt beside him and said, "No one's taking Buddy away, sweetheart. Not while I'm breathing." That night, I sat up searching online, every law, every case, every protection about service animals and HOA policies. And what I found gave me hope. Under the Fair Housing Act, service animals are not considered pets. HOA rules cannot override federal law. They must make reasonable accommodation for people with disabilities. So I called an attorney. When I told the HOA I had legal counsel, they tried to sound confident. "We're just enforcing our rules," they said. But I could tell they weren't expecting pushback. Our lawyer sent them a letter, citing the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and a few previous court rulings. We made it clear, if they continued, we'd see them in court. And suddenly, everything changed. The same people who ignored our calls started replying instantly. They called a special board meeting to review our case. But by then, it wasn't about permission anymore. It was about principle. Ethan's smile had disappeared again during those weeks. He kept asking, "What if they don't let Buddy stay?" Every time, I told him the same thing: We'll fight this. Together. That night before the meeting, I sat beside Ethan as he slept, Buddy curled next to him. I looked at that dog, gentle, loyal, patient, and I knew I wasn't just defending an animal. I was defending my son's right to live without fear. The next morning, I put on my best clothes, walked into that HOA office, and sat across from the board. They looked so confident, clipboards, rules, and cold expressions. The president started, "We appreciate your attendance, but unfortunately, the HOA's pet policy." I stopped him. He's not a pet. He's a service animal, legally protected under federal law. The room went silent. Then I slid the legal documents across the table. "Here's your violation," I said. "You're breaking federal law by discriminating against a disabled child." Their faces changed instantly. You could see panic creeping in. The lawyer we brought spoke next, calm but firm. "If you continue this, we'll be filing a complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development." They tried to backpedal. "We didn't mean to discriminate," one of them said. "We just need to ensure the safety of the neighborhood." "Buddy has never harmed anyone," I replied. "The only thing he's ever done is save my son's life, over and over again." That meeting ended quickly after that. They said they'd review the documents and respond soon. But deep down, I already knew we had them cornered. And when their final letter came in the mail a week later, it said the words I'd been praying for. After review, the HOA grants permanent exemption for the service animal, Buddy. I read that letter out loud to Ethan. He screamed, ran to Buddy, and hugged him so tight I thought my heart would burst. "They can't take him away," he shouted. That moment, that smile, made every sleepless night worth it. But the story doesn't end there, because what happened next will shock you even more. For a few weeks after we won, things were quiet. Too quiet. The HOA board stopped sending letters. The neighbors, who once smiled at us, suddenly avoided eye contact. It was like we had become invisible, or worse, a warning. But peace never lasts long when you stand up to people who hate being told they're wrong. One morning, I woke up to find a note taped to our front door again. My stomach twisted before I even opened it. It read, "Please keep your animal inside. Residents are uncomfortable with its presence in shared spaces." Uncomfortable. That word burned in my chest. Buddy had never barked, never growled, never even approached anyone without permission. He was calm, patient, and perfectly trained. But somehow, his very existence made them uncomfortable. That's when I realized the HOA wasn't done. They couldn't legally take Buddy away, but they could make our lives miserable. Soon, the harassment began. We'd get constant noise complaints, even when the house was silent. HOA inspectors would show up unannounced, walking around our yard, taking pictures of random things like trash bins or our mailbox. One day, they even fined us for having tall grass, the same grass they'd never cared about before. It was clear they wanted revenge. But this time, I was ready. Every call, every visit, every letter, I documented it. I saved everything. The date, the time, the names of every board member who spoke to me. If they wanted a war, I was going to fight it legally, smartly, and calmly. Ethan, meanwhile, was trying his best to stay positive. But I could see the worry on his face. Every time someone from the HOA drove by, he'd hold Buddy tighter. One night he asked, "Mom, what if they hurt him?" That broke me again. "They won't," I said, holding his hand, "because we're not going to let them." I knew I couldn't just protect my family. I had to protect every other family in that neighborhood who might face the same cruelty. So I started talking. I posted on local community boards, sharing what had happened. I didn't use anger or insults, just truth. I wrote about how the HOA tried to remove a service dog, how they broke federal law, and how they continued to harass us even after being proven wrong. The post blew up overnight. People were furious. Dozens of neighbors messaged me privately, saying they'd had similar experiences: unfair fines, bullying, intimidation. One man wrote, "They made me repaint my fence 3 times for no reason." Another said, "They fined me for parking my car 2 inches over the line." It wasn't just us. It was everyone. Within days, a small movement started forming, people demanding transparency from the HOA board. Some wanted the president removed. Others wanted the financial records opened. When the HOA realized how big the backlash was, they panicked. They sent an email to all residents claiming that misinformation was being spread and that they had acted in good faith. But by then, no one believed them. The truth was already out. Then came the real twist. A local journalist reached out to me. She had seen my post and wanted to write a story about it. Family says HOA tried to remove child service dog. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want more attention on Ethan. But he looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "Mom, maybe if people know what they did, they won't do it to anyone else." So, we said yes. When the article was published, everything exploded. Our story went viral. Thousands of comments poured in, people sharing their own HOA horror stories, lawyers offering free advice, and even organizations for disability rights reaching out to help. Within a week, the HOA was drowning in complaints. Their inbox was full. Their phones were ringing non-stop. And guess who called me then? The HOA president. His voice was shaky, completely different from the arrogant tone he had before. "Ma'am," he said, "we'd like to resolve this matter peacefully." I almost laughed. "You had that chance months ago," I said. "Now, you're just trying to save face." He begged me to take down the online posts, saying the HOA's reputation was at stake. I told him, "Your reputation is what you built, not me." After that call, I contacted our lawyer again. We filed an official HUD complaint for discrimination and harassment. And once that process began, everything started falling apart for the HOA. Investigators reached out to neighbors, reviewed every letter, every fine, every message. One by one, the lies started crumbling. They found patterns, how the board targeted families with kids, how they ignored the law, and how they used rules as weapons. And finally, after months of investigation, the HOA was ordered to pay a fine and issue a written apology to us. The president resigned the next week. When the letter of apology arrived, I sat with Ethan and let him open it. He smiled, holding it up like a trophy. "Buddy won," he said softly. And he was right. Buddy did win. But more importantly, Ethan won. He learned that standing up for what's right is never wrong, even when it's scary. A few weeks later, something amazing happened. The same journalist who covered our story reached out again. She wanted to do a follow-up, not about the fight, but about Buddy. She said, "People want to know how he's doing." So we invited her over. When she arrived, Buddy greeted her gently, tail wagging, as Ethan told her stories about how Buddy helped him in school, how he stopped having panic attacks, and how they now visit hospitals to comfort other kids with anxiety. That article wasn't about the HOA anymore. It was about healing, about hope, about how a dog helped a boy find his voice again. The neighborhood started changing after that too. People began speaking up more. New board members were elected, fair ones, who actually listened. And slowly, things began to feel normal again. But every time I pass by the HOA office, I still remember those sleepless nights, those cruel letters, and those moments when I almost gave up. And every single time, I remind myself, silence only helps the oppressor. Courage helps the innocent. So to anyone watching this who's dealing with unfair treatment, remember this: you have rights. Don't let anyone take away your peace, your family, or your voice. You deserve to live freely, with dignity and respect. And if you ever find yourself in a battle you didn't choose, fight smart, not angry. Document everything, learn your rights, and never back down. Because sometimes, standing your ground doesn't just protect you, it inspires others to do the same. Ethan learned that. I learned that. And now, maybe someone out there watching will too. Because the truth is, they didn't just try to take my son's dog. They tried to take our hope. But in the end, hope fought back and won. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it. Someone out there might need the strength this story gives. Hit follow, drop a comment, and tell me, have you ever stood up to something unfair and won? Because your voice might be the next one that changes everything.